We're late, so we're right on time. It's really good. Good morning, everybody. It is session 17, make and receive offers. You can find all these videos online at kwclmhub.com, where you can find everything about the company. What's the license number for the Dover office? Anybody know? You can go to KWCLM. You're making my point. You're making my point. Perfect. We are in the final week, so we're obviously going to do make and receive offers today, negotiate offers Wednesday, get to the close on Friday, next Monday. Yes? Are we open next Monday? Or is that the holiday? I'm so confused. Still open next Monday. Yeah, you're right. The 24th, right? Yeah, no, 22nd. So is it the final Monday that we're closed? That makes sense. All right. People are just, what are they talking about? Somebody's gonna watch this in November and be like, what are they talking about? Random discussions. Yeah. All right. So we are wrapping up next Monday will be session 20, which is brand new future. Perfect. Reminder too, for those of you listening in real time. Good morning, Miles. You look beautiful. We are doing Quantum Leap, which if you have no idea what that's about, it's a great class. It's one of the best classes at KW. We're doing that Tuesday, June 13th. And then Thursday, June 29th, we're doing business planning clinic, which we historically deliver in the fall to get you ready for the next year. We're doing a halftime business planning clinic on Thursday, June 29th, which is also Jennifer Vachon's birthday. So there'll be cake and maybe an open bar and definitely some nail strippers. So we'll see you on the 29th. Or we won't. It's up to you. You can scan that if you want to get the workbook. Zoe's put together phenomenal workbooks for all these sessions. I'll give you 3, 2.5, 1. Everybody done scanning if you're going to scan. Good. The belief system. You see this all over campus. You'll see it all over Keller Williams. It's the Y4C 2Ts. Historically, there was no E, but we added E in the last few years. We have, obviously, as many companies have, we have added DEI committees, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we wanted to add E for equity, opportunities for all. I know a lot of companies love to advertise how great they are for this, that, and the other thing. I know we are pretty well celebrated as a great workplace for females. I think we're, well, I'm gonna, coming out of a DEI conversation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I will say that I'm wildly biased because I've only ever worked here. So I have no idea. Anybody else in the room ever worked at another real estate company? And I think Miles online, he's a first timer here as well. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't really have anything to compare us to, and I'm sort of fine with that level of stupidity because I know I'm in the right place. When I got here back in 2010, I saw out in the lobby somewhere. I always thought it was painted on the wall, but it's not painted on the wall in the lobby, but it is one of our things. It's God, family, business. And to me, that was very important in that order. So, you know, the Y4C 2Ts, this is win-win or no deal. And I want you guys to think of this too as win-win, win-win. There should be a win for each of the clients, and that's what that win-win is. Also, there should be a win for you and the other co-broker. So there should be 4 wins, but we're talking win-win here because we're only focused on the client success. Our job is to get in between the clients and extract emotion. Doesn't mean we're robotic. It doesn't mean that we don't have heart. It doesn't mean that we don't care. Invariably, the 2 humans that are transacting are going to get emotional. As real estate professionals, we have to intercept that emotion and involve and include and insert logic to make sure the deal gets done. You're going to develop a relationship with your client. You will become emotional too. We have to be really good at extracting the emotion. You hear me say all the time, I want you guys to be excited for the opportunity, not attached to the outcome. When we get emotionally attached to the outcome of our deal closing, it probably means we don't have enough deals closing. This morning on the quick start, I reminded you guys that it is August 13th. Like you're 90 days away from going back to school shopping for your kids. I'm 90 days away from driving my son to college, right? Like it's August 13th today. We're 90 days out from mid-August. Integrity, do the right thing. The C is for customers, always come first. Notice it doesn't say the customers are always right, because they're not. Spoiler alert, but they come first. Commitment in all things. Are you committed to this? Or are you interested? Are you committed to your goals or interested? Are you committed to real estate or interested? Commitment in all things. Communication. Seek first to understand. That's us asking questions, peeling the onion, doing the needs analysis. Creativity, ideas before results. Teamwork, together everyone achieves more. Trust starts with honesty. I don't know if he talks about it in his book. Have you guys read or listened to? I think he actually does the read for the audiobook, which would be great because it's friggin' McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey's new book, Greenlight. I think he references it in that book, but he was on somebody's podcast talking about the fact that you don't have to earn his trust. When you enter into a relationship with Matthew McConaughey, you have all of his trust. And it's up to you for him to keep it, right? You have to earn his trust. You have his trust until you lose it. That starts with honesty. Equity, opportunities for all. We have the corner office here in Portsmouth that I affectionately call the Shark Tank. It's all glass, right? It's over by the gas station in the front of the building, or the side of the building, I suppose. When we first moved in and we were naming all the rooms, and so I tried to get the 3 conference rooms to be Timothy, Charles, and Lindsay. They wouldn't go for that, so we went with Coastal Lakes and Mountains. You'll notice here, I named this room the Knowledge Center with a K and a W, right? Capital K, capital W. And I wanted the Shark Tank to be the ALC Lounge, the Associate Leadership Council Lounge. And somebody's like, well, no, we'll just call it the Agent Lounge, because if we call it the ALC Lounge, that's exclusionary. Does everybody in our ecosystem have the ability to earn their way into the ALC? Yeah, I'm going to leave that right there. That's a limiting belief. But I don't know the building, so I lost. But anyway, success results through people. If you want to go fast, we're going to go alone. If you want to go far, you're going to bring other people with you. Results through people. And even if you remain a solo artist for the rest of your career, you're going to have operational support. There's going to be humans doing paperwork for you, so you can go get more deals. Because you see some teams add more people, but absent systems and models and efficiency, more people on the bus don't necessarily make you fast, right? They can slow you down. So you can go really fast by yourself. You'll definitely go further when you bring other people with you. We're going to go through the offer process, preparing the offer, writing it, presenting it, receive and respond, and then we'll do some recaps. Gary Keller from the Red Book. Some of the best agents I know love nothing more than a difficult negotiation that gives them a chance to really shine, to acknowledge objections, to discover the solution with which both sides can be happy. Think about how much time I will pick on the Patriots. Think about how much time the Patriots spend every week during the regular season getting ready for, yes, what arguably could be a 3.5-hour game, but it's 60 minutes of actual gameplay. How much time do they spend in an average week getting ready for a 60-minute game? A lot. So when that opportunity comes up that you get to, because you're going to have that one time that somebody asks you that question. The next time you're in an elevator with somebody and they say, hey, Talena, why should I use you? Well, you know, Mr. Lindsay, I'm not sure you should. But if you have a few minutes, I'd love to ask you a few questions to make sure we're a fit. When you know you have the killer app, when you have the silver bullet for the question they just asked. Because sometimes you work on a script and you don't get to use it for years. Like, what if I'm working with a FSBO or an expired and they never ask me, what am I going to do differently? Then you don't get to use the 3P, 7P script. If you remember what the 3P, 7P script is. But then when you get to use it, you're like, oh, then sometimes you're shit, I forgot what it was. That's why we script, right? Some of the best agents I know love nothing more than a difficult negotiation that gives them a chance to really shine, to acknowledge objections, and to discover a solution in which both sides can be happy. Back to the win-win. So the offer process. Pretty obvious. Buyer makes offer. Seller can respond in one of three ways. Now, in this market, are we getting multiple showings or multiple offers? Multiple offers, right? That's sort of a lead indicator on where we are in the marketplace. You're getting a lot of showings and no offers. We're moving towards a buyer's market. Fewer showings, many offers, we're in a seller's market. When you're in a market, and you can, well, let's remember this. The seller creates the market for themselves. And when I say that, what I mean is, how many times does a seller say, well, we're going to price it here? Some delusional number. Because who really creates the market? What are we using to help guide the pricing of our homes? The next time you sit down with the seller at a kitchen table, we're sitting down with historical data, which are closings that were agreed upon after offers were accepted, after offers were made by buyers. Buyers set the market. Your jackalope seller, he or she, I'll say he, because the guys are idiots, the girls hire professionals and usually listen to professionals. Men are morons. Can we just get that out of the way? We love to think that we can solve all the crimes, right? If you have an expired, if you have a FSBO, I will die on this hill. I will fall on this nerve sword. If you have a FSBO, right? For sale by owner, I say it stands for frequently seen but overlooked, right? If you have a FSBO, I guarantee there's a guy behind that. He's going to run out to Home Depot. He's going to grab a sign. He's going to write his cell phone number on the sign. Brilliant. He's going to grab his wife's iPhone 2, take 3.5 black and white pictures, 2 of which is thumb are in the frame. He's going to put it on his wife's MySpace. She has 7 friends. 9 of them are dead. And then he's going to wait for the door to get kicked in by the marketplace. He's an idiot. The same guy's going to walk into the garage, grab his drill, and drill his own molar because he's got a sore tooth. FSBOs and expireds are looking to save 2 things: time and money, right? So when your moron seller, and I want, as your coach, Zoe and I want to put you in a position where you guys can push away from these kitchen tables. When you're sitting at a kitchen table that is 4 buckets of stupid with a side of fries, I want to empower you guys to push away from that table. Be like, I appreciate your time, Mr. Lindsay. I'm sure there's an agent that can't wait to work with you. I'm not that agent. How good would that feel? When you have a bunch of listings that you're already working with, you have 3 more appointments that week, and you can tell somebody they're too stupid to get on your ride. That's where I want you guys to live. So when they're looking for this astronomical number, should you work with them? And then they finally get an offer 3 weeks later, and the offer is way below their listing price, which Gary helped us last year at Family Reunion, or this year at Family Reunion. What did he say in California? Let's stop calling it the listing price. It's the initial marketing price. And as your coach, and you'll hear everyone in this ecosystem remind you, the best place to get your first price reduction is where? At the kitchen table before the universe finds out about it. So when the Lindsays sit down and say 1.2, and it's a garden style walkout ranch in Stratford that they bought for 280, that, you know, might be somewhere in the 3s now. Should we get 1.2? No. But we're teammates, Mr. Lindsay. So the fact that you want, let's say 700, but based on the historical data that the market's telling us, we're probably at 375. So as teammates, could we start at 450? You always want to get them to make their first price reduction before the world finds out about it. That's the best place for your first price reduction. So the initial marketing price, my initial point was, when you're on and you know that you're over, because I'm going to play the part of Nathan Dickey real quick. I don't want you guys walking away from kitchen tables empty-handed. I don't want you creating a reputation for yourself that you take things overpriced and underpaid right? If they're telling you what you're going to list for and you're not negotiating with them at the kitchen table, and they're telling you what they're going to pay you and you're not negotiating that at the kitchen table, we should probably get out of real estate. We got to get good at those two conversations. And in the grand scheme of things, when you're willing to take it really high, you should tell them your commission should be really high too. Because if I get it sold for this price, Mr. Lindsay, you should absolutely pay me 7%. When they're overpriced and they finally get an offer in this cascade of ideas on what we should be doing, seller responds in one of three ways. When your seller finally gets an offer on their horribly priced home, the best thing they can do is respond. That is the number one thing they should do, is respond. With anything. Not a picture of their butt, not with a middle finger, but with an actual response. Well, it's been over a month. And they're the first person to make us an offer. Look at how ridiculous it is. Listen, Mr. Lindsay, said with love. And like, obviously you have to parse your words here carefully. If I was super close, I'm going to pick on my friend Chad, who I did a lot of real estate with when I was selling. I could say to Chad, listen, Chad, we are the ugliest girl at the dance. And somebody just asked us to dance. Dance. Like, somebody asked you to dance. Dance. We are not making ourselves attractive at all. Like, no, I'm going to wait for a better offer. It's been 4 months. They're not coming. So the best thing to do is respond. The seller can respond in one of three ways: counter the offer, accept it, or reject it. And obviously, if it counters, we go into negotiations. If you go to acceptance, you begin the contract to close process. If they reject, the buyer agent contacts the listing agent to learn more. Don't assume no means no, because no rarely means no. We have to look at that final one. The rejection of the offer is like an objection when we're sitting with a buyer or a seller. If a buyer or a seller offers us an objection, is that a no, or is that a continuation of our interview? Right? And the reason we go over scripts and role play, the reason we do Fight Club Tuesdays and Thursdays, is to prepare you guys for the rejection of the offer. Because don't forget all the scripts, all the things that we have to get ready for. Initially, when you guys are getting started, right now, for the most part, most of our agents who are in their freshman year are trying to get really good at their desk on the phone to get to a kitchen table. But then when you get to a kitchen table, what's that? It's a whole new set of scripts to start to get good at again, right? Because now we're negotiating, you negotiated your way to the kitchen table. Now we're negotiating our way into their hearts to get them to sign so we can put a sign in their yard. Then we have to start to negotiate when we're starting to negotiate with other brokers. And then, especially on the buyer side, you're going to go back and negotiate with your buyer to make them fall back in love with the house again. Because what's coming up? Home inspections. So I've always said to you, when you guys come and tell us that you get your first buyer on a contract, Zoe and I are going to do the golf clap. Congratulations. Because what's coming? You're going to have to make them fall in love with the house again. Because when the inspections come back and they're like, oh my God, this, that, we need all this fixed. Yep, this is worth it. That's worth it. We're going to do this. We're going to ask them to meet us halfway on this. But negotiating your way through home inspections is like a whole nother transaction. Then making sure, because this inevitably happens, in that window between the inspections and the closing. Now we're negotiating when we're going to close, how we're going to close. You know, did we get everything that we needed? Because you're asked for maybe some things to be done. There are certain things that have to be done before closing sometimes, right? If you're talking FHA or VA, we have to have things done so it can close. Other than that, if you're asking for certain money or you're going to allow them to do things, they have to present receipts on or before closing, all that kind of stuff. You'll notice just getting people to move out. Wait till you have your first seller and you're swinging by. And this is a brilliant thing to do. You should be probably driving by politely. Like if you know they were supposed to have a pod in the driveway, or you know there's supposed to be like the jungle gym is supposed to come down. I don't think we can call it jungle gym anymore. I don't know. I just said it. Fire me. The jungle. Yeah, I have no idea. I heard that last week. I'm too old for the planet, I think. The jungle gym is supposed to come down. They're supposed to be draining the above ground pool, right? All these things, and you're driving by and none of this stuff is happening. This is brilliant. One of our dear friends said, oh, I would just make sure I would grab like a 4-pack of iced coffees, depending on what I thought was going to be there for humans. And we just pop in. Hey, just wanted to see how everything was going. Because that's a huge thing. Getting your sellers to start to move. It's fascinating when you have a seller. They want to move. They actually have a time frame in which they need to move. A kid's going to school or somebody's stage 4 or anything like that. And you're like, well, let's, you know what, there's a lot of stuff that we need to depersonalize and start to move. And we obviously want to clear out the garage too. Why don't we get a pod? And they're like, oh, I don't know if I want a pod in the driveway. That makes us look desperate. No, it makes you look moving, actually. Makes you look moving, makes you look decided. A pod in the driveway doesn't mean you're going to take less money. That's like when I say to you guys, very important words to pepper in right now. If you're working with a buyer, awesome, Mr. Keller. Do you want to look at that today? What's wrong with that? Create that sense of urgency if that's where they are, right? And when I'm door knocking and saying, hey, I'm so glad I caught you at home. Talena, my name's Tim Lindsay. I'm with Keller Williams, Coastal Lakes and Mountains. I've got buyers who are really interested in 28 Main Street, and we missed out on that. They're desperate to move to this town. Using the word desperate in that sentence doesn't mean my buyer is going to make a moronic offer in a couple of weeks. I'm just using that word to spark your interest. They are desperate to move to Portsmouth. A lot of people are. Are they ready, willing, and able? Are they prepared to write a massive check? Can they afford a parking spot in Portsmouth? We'll find out. But fucking desperate, I know that. I'm going to use that word because those kind of words pique interest. That's why when I used to door knock and somebody would come to the door and I just say, hey, we have buyers who are interested in moving to this street. Are you guys considering moving in the next 10, 20, or 30 minutes? I would say it like that every time. I'd say deadpan because they were never ready for that. Like, did you say minutes? Yeah. I mean, we're willing to wait a little bit longer, but like, you say it that way. It takes them completely. It's the same as saying, why should I work with you, Tim? Well, Talena, I'm not sure we should work together, but if you can answer a few questions, we can find out if we're a match. They're not ready for that. I'm not door knocking. I'm not door knocking your neighborhood. Are you thinking about moving sometime between now and 2035, Mr. Lindsay? The hell is that? No sense of urgency. Like, pull up in a moving truck. Are you moving out today? Probably not. Okay, just checking. When are you moving out? Like, we're moving. I've got buyers that want to move in. That use of language, and I'm an English major and semantics are important to me, but like the use of the words, right? What have I always said to you guys? Out of the 100% of our power, 7% is the words we choose. 43% is the tonality and emotion in which we deliver them. The rest of it, the other 50% is our body language. So what words are you using? How are you delivering them? Wildly important. Has anybody been in an offer process yet? Anybody playing at home? I think we have the beautiful Miles Underwood.
No offers yet.
No offers yet. All right. So preparing to write an offer. This is huge on the buyer side. If you are coming from your second showing, let's say the Lindsays looked at a place over the weekend and you called, then, you know, Miles calls me and says, hey, Timmy, the Lindsays were in on Saturday. They wrote you down as their agent. Do they want another showing? I check with them. They do. We go and look at it today. And then I'm going to call Miles this afternoon. Hey, Miles, thanks for the second showing. Lindsays is super excited. I'm going to be putting together an offer. You'll see it later on this afternoon. Question for you. What does a great offer look like to your sellers? If you're not asking that question after you call back Miles, thanking him for the private showing, for the second showing, if you're not asking the listing agent what a great offer looks like to the sellers, go to Kohl's now. You're not doing your job. Because the beauty of that question is, what are most agents? Most of our agents are high I's and D's, very direct, right? And high I is, I'm a high I, Tacosaurus Rex. They don't mean to, but they'll start telling you stuff. And what's most important is when Miles starts saying to me, yeah, you know, and you're going to get the flippant, you're going to normally get the flippant, well, cash yesterday, Tim, that's what they're looking for. Miles, honestly, what does a great offer look like to your sellers? You know what? If you're cool with the tractor staying in the garage. They're not taking that with them. They're going to a 50 plus. It's gonna be all manicured lawns and stuff. That's why they're moving. Yeah, if you want to leave the tractor behind, that's fine. If it's just gonna remain there, we're not gonna have that like off the side of the Alta statement, are we? No, we're just gonna leave it behind. It's fine. Okay, cool. They've got a bunch of stuff in the attic and the barn. They don't really want to clean that out. Don't worry about it. My buyers aren't worried about that. They're gonna drain the above ground pool, but they're not gonna tear it down. Don't worry about that. Because depending sometimes on your financing, if there's not a fence around the pool, right? The insurance binder will not hit unless there's a fence around the pool or unless the pool gets drained, right?
That you grab.
That could be on both. That could be on both. I'm remembering, we had an above ground at our house. I'm remembering from that. And then, yeah, I know that big, huge wooden swing set that's in the backyard. They're gonna just leave that. They're actually gonna donate it, but like they're 80 years old, Timmy. They want to get to South Carolina and play golf and die. What has he not said yet? Didn't mention money yet. Then, oh, well, and of course, this is their nest egg. This is the rest of their life. So they're pretty firm on price. Didn't say firm on price, didn't say not budging, pretty firm on price. But when you come back, and if you want the emotional win for your buyers, the Lindsay's wanted 800 and you come back at 799, but they get to leave all their shit behind. That's why you made that phone call. If you're not making that phone call, or if you've never made a phone call because you haven't gotten to that point in your career yet, said with love, make that phone call. Like, why would you not? Especially if you've been listening to me from day one, and when you called to set the first appointment, you confirmed that he's offering 2.5%, but your agreement with your buyers is for 3%. Is he able to support that? If you've already had that uncomfortable conversation, what's keeping you from asking Miles what a great offer to his sellers looks like? That's you doing your job. That's writing a great contract. And I'll quote the great John Duffy. If you've never met John Duffy, and he hasn't been around for a while because he's been sick, he's still with us, thank God. He is the Yoda to Nate Skywalker. He's the only reason we're here. He introduced Nathan to the guys down in Texas. That's why we're here. And the great John Duffy said a long time ago, we work on behalf of our buyers until the contract is written. And then together with our buyers, we work on behalf of the contract. Once you slide that contract across the table to the other adults in the room, the paper is white, the ink is black. There are no nuances. There are no shades of gray. Oh no, that's not really what we meant. And I hate, the analogy. Well, you should be able to read it if you're a 4-year-old. No, everybody's 18 plus and sober, hopefully. There's no shades of gray. There's no nuances. What we really meant there was this. Nope. If I read the contract, it's understood. And as soon as you and your buyer shove it across the table, that is representative of all their hopes and dreams. And you can't do that unless you ask that question. What does a great offer look like to your sellers? So you can put together the best possible offer and maybe eat some crow and have to tear down a swing set, but you got it for $799. Because what will happen, you will see this happen in the wild. It is fascinating, and these people should light themselves on fire, then leave the industry right after that, is you'll have another client working with another buyer's agent who doesn't call Miles, who doesn't ask that question, but they offered $815, Selena. And they told the old people to move the tractor, clean the attic, rip down the pool, and take apart the swing set. I'm 80. You're gonna pay me 15 grand to do all that? Nope, I'm gonna take this kid over here for $799 and walk away. $16,000 that I didn't net, and I didn't break my back. And I'm on a plane to Hilton Head faster. There's so much stupid in our industry right now. Please don't be part of that stupid. Ask great questions. I say this all the time. The bullet points on the back of my grave will say, ask great questions, take great notes, have honest conversations. If we're not asking what a great offer looks like for your seller, when we're about to write up an offer on behalf of our buyer, we're not doing our job. Ensure the property is still available. Build rapport with the listing agent, obviously. And don't forget 80-20 rule. You're going to do 80% of your business with 20% of the agents. Drive around. Drive through York right now. 30% of the signs are Troy Williams, right? Some of our agents absolutely dominate the space they work in. You're going to do 80% of your business with 20% of your co-brokes. So play nice in the space. Even if it kills you, kill them with kindness. I beg of you. Inquire about activity. How many offers have they had? What have they not accepted? What hasn't gone through? When you're working with somebody who's VA, I had a kid and it broke my heart. I never got him to the closing table. And he just did not have reality inserted in his brain, which was problematic. My new word to be problematic. My wife loves that one. So it's like my 2 weeks into my freshman year, this kid shows up in my life. He comes in as a lead. He's a VA, VA loan, which obviously government backed. There can't be chipping paint. There can't be dead bodies in the basement. There can't be anything wrong. And he would text me every other day. God bless him. I think he had, and this is a while ago. So this is probably fall 2010. So 13 years ago. And he's like, hey, I want to look at this one. It was always like in New York. Like if he was looking at something that wasn't in Ringe or Keene, it was like a celebration, right? Because we had to go that far west to get the price point down. He had honestly, about $118,000 to play with. And he's like, so I see this one here, and it was like, it'd be 140 or whatever. And it was in rough shape. The listing agents were always like wildly, transparent about what kind of shape it was in. And before I would set up, I'm going to call. Hey, Stacy, Tim Lindsay, Keller Williams, Coastal Lakes and Mountains. I've got a VA buyer who's looking, and they'd stop me. I wouldn't even finish that sentence. Oh, Tim, I completely appreciate it. I've had a couple people VA try to go at this. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Awesome, Stacy. Yeah, there's not a lot of pictures there. Is that a tarp on the back of the roof? There is a tarp on the back of the roof. Is that covering a hole? It's covering everything, Tim. It's covering the rafters. Thank you. Now, sometimes, because my dad was a Vietnam vet. So I always wanted to respect our military. If it was close enough, I would take him to show him why it doesn't work. Like, Kevin, do me a favor. We're in the living room right now. Look up. What do you see? You don't see the ceiling. You see the sky. This is why we can't buy this house. It doesn't have a roof, Kevin, right? So you got to be wildly transparent with them about that kind of stuff. Never got this kid to the closing table because he just was always trying to, and he just wasn't qualified for enough, ever. You're going to hear, and I'm making this sound like it's impossible to get VAs to close. That is not the case. Talk to Bradley Kelly. We've got great agents. The great Sue Doyle, who is in our market center, works constantly with VAs. We have Samantha Catterall up in the Lakes region on Legacy, who works with VAs. When you hear the scuttlebutt that VAs are too tough to close or it's really tough to work with VAs, that's bullshittery. That's not the case. You can do it. There's extra work to do because you're going to find the right property. But just because they're VA doesn't mean they don't have a lot of money. My kid that I worked with didn't have a lot of money to work with. That was his biggest struggle. Inquire about the offers. Why did they fall through? Ask questions about the seller's motivations and needs. And now the listing agent should not expose all the seller's motivations. Doesn't mean you shouldn't ask. Because what will they do more often than not? They'll tell you more than they should. Ask how they want to receive the offer. And basically, does that, would they like a paper copy? Right? And not that they can't print it up, but listen, if it's going to be that simple, like you're going to email it through and whatever. Yeah, if you could give me a paper copy, that would be great, or whatever, or they want it in some certain format because they're going to go sit with it. This is important too. I had this happen all the time. Somebody will come knock on my door. We're like, hey, Tim. Yeah, what's up? Hey, I just submitted an offer to Miles Underwood. And he said he's going to get back to me in like a couple of days because he has to go meet with the sellers. Okay. Well, can he just call them and go over it online? Have you talked to Miles about his sellers? Right. I'm already uncovering. I already know that this kid didn't call Miles and say, what does a great offer look like? Right. Because Miles has to do what? Miles has to go over to Stratford and sit with Mr. and Mrs. Lindsay and go through the paperwork. They're 4,000 years old. They're not going to pull it up on their iPad. They want to look at the paper. They need him to sit next to them as their fiduciary and go over the deal so they feel heard and cared for. So please, let's not be two buckets of stupid with a side of fries and be mad because Miles isn't turning around an offer in 7 minutes because Mr. Lindsay, who's 98 years old, doesn't have an iPhone 15. Like, slow roll. And if you're up in the Lakes region, where a lot of people who have houses up there, guess where they are? They're in Florida dying. And this is going to be a mail away closing. And they're going to put parchment into a big envelope and they're going to walk it down on a pony. And then it's going to come back up 95. Like, we have to insert patience. Just because most of our deals are flying at light speed doesn't mean all of them will. And this is where we have to insert logic. And we talked about this, make it a win-win. We have to make sure we get in between the emotions of the two people. The young couple buying their first lake house in Chickenboro on the big puddle has to remember that they're eventually going to be the old couple down in Florida doing a mail away closing because they're too old to get on a plane now or whatever. So when you make your first offer and somebody's working with an older couple, you would have found that out if you called Miles and said, what does a great closing look like? That's a better question. Never mind. What does a great offer? What does a great closing look like for your sellers? And then he can start to say, hey, glad you asked me. Just so you understand, the Lindsays are in their 80s. And he's going to start to uncover all that stuff. Now I can go back to my buyers. Like, just so you know, the Lindsays are in 0.0 rush. But if we play it like this, we're going to be at the top of the list. Obtain the buyer's pre-approval from the lender. You should have that before you start shopping, right? We don't, and I say get in the car, and I know we're not doing that a lot, and I'd prefer if you guys aren't in the same car with your buyers unless you really know them or you trust them or both. But we're not getting in the car showing buyers anything until we have what? We have New Hampshire broker's disclosure, right? We have KWCLM general disclosure. We have pre-approval of proof of funds. And then what's the final thing we need? Oh, look at you. Perfect. Perfect. At some point, you're going to get one of those signed too late. Because it happens to everybody. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because you'll be like, oh my God, we closed. Because I've heard this before, and this makes me want to throat kick people. They're like, well, no, but we have a purchase and sale now. And this happens on the listing side too. Your listing agreement is about to expire, but you get them into a purchase and sale. And some people will be like, well, no, but somebody told me that as long as you have that, you don't like, you're still under agreement with them. No, your file needs to have all the things for you to get paid. Because if you think that Kaylee and Tristan are like, it's just paperwork. We have 700 agents. The state can't wait to audit us. That's got to be coming. We are so hated, right? I used to like to say we're the Patriots, but we're not that good. They're not that good anymore to compare us to them. But yeah, like everybody's gunning for us. We used to be the little mom and pop shop, like, oh, Keller Williams, they're a paint store. No, they sell real estate. Are you sure? Like, we're a monster now. And the state is not our friends. The commission is not our friends. If they come in and audit and start pulling files and we don't have everything in there, I wouldn't want to be you if you're getting called into Nate's office because you've got jacked up files. That's why Colin exists. That's why JV and Westcott exists. That's why Kaylee and Tristan will not pay you 99% of the time. So get that stuff signed. If you're signing that on the back of a trunk after a closing, you should go lay in traffic. 7th level, of course. Review the multiple listing service and the tax records. Now, mind you, your title company is going to help you clear, all that kind of stuff. Make sure they don't have any clouds. You're going to produce them a comparative market analysis on the buyer side. Yes. Like, this is a great way to get good at doing CMAs to make sure that you can prove to your buyers that where the listing agent and the seller agreed to list their property makes sense. If you run a CMA and you see a huge delta in the pricing, then I would call Miles and be like, hey man, I just ran the numbers. Is there something you know about that I don't know about that has you guys playing in this space? And the last time I did it, I was shaking in my boots because it was Erin Prue, who's adorable and the nicest woman in America, but I'm still afraid of her, right? Because it was like my freshman year and she'd been around and I'm like, Like, hey, I'm not really questioning you because I don't want you to punch me in the face, but like, where did you get this number? And she had a couple of pocket listings, blah, blah, blah. And we were right there-ish. I think we ended up closing at like 9:49, which was delicious. And we weren't that far off, but there was stuff that I didn't know about that she knew about. So that's a great phone call to make. And we want to be doing those CMAs for our buyers. So A, we get good at them in general, and we can prove to them the offer we're about to make makes sense or doesn't make sense. Because sometimes it will help you justify why they should come up. Because you're going to get buyers. I know this is shocking. You're going to get, they don't show this on HGTV in between commercials. You're going to get buyers like, you know what, Miles, we're just going to make a low ball offer. Just going to screw with them. Like, I appreciate that, Mr. Lindsay. You know what I'm not in the business of doing? Screwing with people. Like, nope. Get the seller's disclosure statement and other needed documents, right? We want to see what the sellers have disclosed about the property. And if something did fall through, going back to what number were we on? Number 4, you'll see stuff go pending and then it comes back on the market. Something came up in discovery during an inspection that either the buyer and seller couldn't agree to mitigate or wasn't something that was disclosed that they weren't willing to deal with. Now, the thing is, when that happens and it shows up, now that has to get added to the disclosures. And when it's something like, mold in the attic or whatever, they've got to go in and treat that to go back on the market because it's going to get disclosed. Should be 4,000% of the time it should be disclosed. But then the buyers might, like, even if it's mitigated, they just don't want to be in a house that had that or whatever the case may be. So all of that stuff, wildly important. The number one thing is, are you calling the listing agent and asking what a great offer looks like to the sellers? People don't do that. They're the same people that aren't asking to confirm that you can support their 3%, which is brain damage. We get the luxury in our business to sit down at every kitchen table and renegotiate our contract. Think about your poor friends that work at Liberty Mutual. And they're still there. I'm no judgment, but I'm just using this. When I say Liberty Mutual, think corporate America. Your friend that's at any corporate environment took their job 7 years ago. They accepted $80,000. There was an article in Forbes about 5 years ago that said the average American said 75 is good. $75,000. Most Americans feel $75,000 is good. They took 80 about 7 years ago. What just happened at a company like Liberty Mutual just in the last few years? They furloughed people. They sent people to work from home. They didn't bring everybody back. The Dover campus just closed, right? There's been a lot of realignment. The number one answer in corporate America when reviews come up is be thankful you still have a job, Stacy, right? Or you're getting that 1 to 2% maybe cost of living increase that probably isn't matching inflation. But we get on any given Sunday to sit down at somebody's kitchen table and demand our marketing fee. So please get really good at having that conversation. Your offer checklist is in the student workbook on page 169. So prepare that checklist. Ensure it's available, build rapport with the listing agent, inquire about activity, other offers, why'd they fall through, questions about motivations and needs. You're going to run into most people who are still using dotloop. I know a lot of people in our ecosystem are still using dotloop. Sidebar about dotloop. Do we know who owns dotloop? What? Billo. Billo owns dotloop. So Uncle Gary had an agreement with our dear friends at Billo for the longest time that we would have data protection. And when, ironic how this happened at the same time, when Billo decided to become a brokerage, guess what they told Gary? We're not going to sign a new agreement. So are you welcome to use, we can't tell you not to, right? You'll always hear Zoe and I preface most of our statements as, I'm not telling you how to run your business. We're telling you how, we're offering best practices. If I'm going to use Billo and dotloop being Billo, if I'm going to use that, I have to know that the data that I'm putting into dotloop is not safe. Now, you could argue anytime you punch any information into anything on planet America, it's not safe. You're knowingly putting your client's data into a system and a server that is owned by another brokerage who has face-to-face with Gary, our founder, said, I can't make any promises. So Gary said, it's probably in our best interest to use DocuSign. You'll hear a lot of people on our ecosystem, oh, dotloop's just easier. Yeah, I get that. Because you've been riding dotloop for a long time. It's like riding a bike. Now we're asking you to ride a unicycle. A little more practice needed. DocuSign's different. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the words they use. When, like stop crying, just figure it out. Said with love. Get better at DocuSign. It's going to serve your clients and your future, and your data will be protected moving forward.
Hey, Tim, I got a quick question on DocuSign.
Yes, sir.
And dotloop.
Yes, sir.
I was just hearing feedback based on, getting extra copies into your clients' hands of prepared documents, and then once they signed on dotloop, it doesn't send an extra copy. Do they do that through DocuSign, or can you access that, or can your clients access that directly through DocuSign?
What additional copies?
Yeah, just so they have them in hand, whereas you sign dotloop, it just, goes into the Billo ether ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they should be able to. I'm not a remarkable expert on any of that because I'm not in there all the time.
Yeah.
I'm using it to sign agreements here and there, but I'll be honest, I'm probably still seeing agents send me stuff to sign off on, and 70% of the time it's dotloop.
Yeah. All right.
I'm not seeing a lot of DocuSign. I would, that's a phenomenal question for Melissa.
Great.
And or check with Westcott. You got Westcott and JB today at 1 o'clock on Keller TV.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
I check with them because they're taller, better looking, and smarter than me. So
I don't know about that, but
oh, I do, but I appreciate it. So price and terms, and don't forget this. Your client only gets to go with one of those two, unless it is a perfect baked in heaven's oven offer where everybody's winning and winning. If you are going to dig your heels in on the price, then you probably don't get to set the terms. If you're going to set the terms, you don't get to set the price. If you set the price, you don't get to set the terms. This goes back to our couple who's trying to go to South Carolina to play golf and die, right? We're going to hold on our price, so we're willing to take down the swing set and all the other stuff. Or we're not locked on price, and here are some things we'd love to not have to deal with. Conversely, if the buyers are like, I need this done, that done, this done, that done before we move in. If you're asking for a whole bunch of conditions to be met, then you can't really also say, and I want it at this price. Does that make sense? So price and terms. But as we get started, we have to decide what those look like. What are we asking for? And what are we offering? Seller's disclosure is going to have a lot to do with that, obviously. And at this point, we know that we have a home inspection coming on the other side of this. And you have a lot of people, the great Susan Kenyon, who you guys know from contracts, and she's taught Ignite a few times. John Kenyon is always in Fight Club. The Kenyons are big on pre-listing home inspections. It's not a bad idea, and here's why. If we know, and it's so funny because people thought this was going to make such a big difference. You see new construction these days, and you go down into the garage or the basement closet before you step into the garage, and you see the stack coming out of the weeper, right? Because a lot of builders now are putting the stack for the radon. There's already a pipe there. So they've done that much. So now if you want to actually add radon mitigation out of the weeper, you just build the rest of it, put the fan in, have it go through the roof. And when we saw these starting to get thrown into houses, I'm like, oh my God, it doesn't get down the price of goddamn bit. It's unbelievable. Everybody's like, no, it's still $1,400, still $1,200. That used to be like the biggest part of the project. We had it done at our house. The crew came in, drilled through the foundation into the weeper, put the whole thing in. It goes up through our little, down in our basement. We've got like a closet where the oil tank is. It's in the corner of that over by our power boards. Goes up, it goes over into our garage, up the wall in the garage, and through our roof in the garage. And that cost us $1,300, of which we got the concessions from our seller when we bought from the Saunders. They're putting these stacks now in already, and you're having companies come in and still charge you like they're drilling through the foundation, which is amazing. My point being, if you are going to go do that home inspection before you list, and you find out you do have radon, and you know it's going to get asked for, if you did that and found out beforehand and maybe just did it already, just to mitigate all that, it would cost you $1,400. If a buyer finds out that the radon is above 4.0, how much are they going to ask for? They're going to ask for 12 or $1,300 bucks? Or they're going to ask for $5,000? You get to control the expenses when you do a pre-listing home inspection. Do you have to do it? No. Is it a good practice? Sure. If you have stuff, for sure, if you have stuff that you know is going to come up, at least get the quotes. If your seller is not going to make the improvements, get quotes to make the conditional improvements. So that way, we've talked about this all the time. That way, when I'm standing with my buyer in the front yard at Telena's listing, and we're all standing there, me and my buyer standing there, my buyer's like, whew, the roof needs to be mowed, right? Because Telena's sellers bought the house back in 1932. The roof is 4,000 years old. The roof had a 25-year life design. Telena's sellers know the roof looks like a skate park. It's a little wavy. It looks like a roof on a house in the Shire, right? Like Frodo should be coming out of the door, right? It's in rough shape. Telena's sellers know that. Telena's sellers also did not want to take on the expense of doing the roof. So they got some local quotes. I'm using my fingers, my air quotes. They got some local quotes. I'm not saying they made it up, but you got like 3 different local quotes for roofers. And you just like architectural, straight up, nothing crazy. Maybe you got a couple of quotes, regular shingles. Nobody really does those anymore. Architectural shingles, metal roof. You looked at all 3. And then you just said, on average, between those 3 quotes, it's about $24,000. Did you take your $500,000 house and subtract $24,000 based on the quote? No, I'm not telling you to do that. All I'm telling you to do is make sure you got some local quotes. So when your price first hits the market, and I'm standing there with my buyer, and I turn to you and say, kid, you got to mow that roof. Telena turns to me and says, oh, I completely understand that, Tim. My sellers took that into account. We gathered some local quotes and we factored that into our pricing. Oh, what did she just do? She just roundhouse throat kicked me in front of my buyer. Guess what my buyer and I cannot do now? We can't ask for any money. We can, but Telena just told me to shut up and sit down. We can ask for money towards the roof. But Telena just verbalized to me, we understand that would be a concern. My sellers did not want to conquer that project. We gathered some local quotes and we factored that into our pricing. Pig Latin, dear Tim, don't be a moron. It's already in the price. Yes, it's like going to an all-inclusive. Your drinks are free, Mr. Lindsay. Sit down, shut up, and have your Mai Tai. If you come back at me on a $500,000 house and tell me you need a $60,000 roof, you can kick cans and I can kick your ass. We're not playing. I'm not playing. That's why we have these conversations with our sellers. 4,000%. If you're not going to make the improvements, then we have to factor in quotes so we can turn and have that polite conversation in front of the buyer. And she would not turn to she's not going to turn to the buyer and say that. She's going to turn to me and say that. And I know this seems really weird, but we never communicate or hand paperwork directly to somebody's client. We always hand it to the other agent. Does that make sense? So obviously you can be in a group conversation, but I'd be addressing, Talena would turn and address me with that. And she would do that by saying, completely understand that, Tim. She wouldn't turn to my client, Stacy, and say, I understand that, Stacy. No, completely understand that, Tim. The Lindsays didn't want to tackle that project. We got some local quotes. We factored that into our pricing. Done. Picture a 6-shooter on the table. And every time I ask a question, she just rotates the chamber and pulls a bullet out. You're just taking ammunition out of the weapon. So when you come and make that offer, no shots fired. Completely disarmed. Completely disarmed. And it's all about knowing the questions to ask, how to prepare your seller, how to prepare your buyer, so you're prepared to have those conversations. And if people aren't doing that, and I guarantee there's people that you're going to deal with in your career that won't do that. Because we are heading into, I'll say it out loud because I'm proud of you guys. We're heading into the dumbest years of real estate are yet to come. Because some of the last pieces of education most agents are going to get is their licensing class. And don't get me wrong, there's only 3 of you in class today, and I love you for it. But there's not too many brokerages that offer this anyway. You know, or contract class 35 times a week, or like you got asked the broker today at 1 o'clock. Some of the dumbest real estate that you're ever going to witness is yet to come. So you guys just being the sharpest marble in the drawer are going to be light years ahead of most of the idiots you're going to deal with. And I say that with love, and I know I'm being recorded. I don't care. There's so much stupid out there right now. All you guys have to do is be awake and ask great questions, and you're going to win. So conveyances, what's moving with the property? This is so important. Don't forget, when you're making the offer on behalf of your buyer, after you've been in the second showing, make sure you're taking notes. Because if I'm in the kitchen at Miles Listing and it's a Sub-Zero fridge and a Viking 6-top stove, he's in culinary. He's getting very excited now, right? Yeah. Yep. And I'm dumb enough. Actually, I'm going to correct that. I'm going to spell the word differently. Dumb enough, D-Z-U-M-B. If I'm dumb enough as the buyer's agent to write stainless steel appliances, guess what he's going to do? Or maybe his sellers are going to do, because they're going to read the offer and be like, oh, stainless steel appliances in the kitchen. Now this has happened. Suddenly the Sub-Zero is gone and the Viking's gone because I didn't write down model numbers and brands. But there's stainless steel appliances in the kitchen. Words matter. So Sub-Zero, model 305. Viking 6-top stove, model 809. As viewed on May 13th, 16th, whatever today is. Is it the 16th? 15th? My mother-in-law's birthday. It's so easy to forget. My wicked mother-in-law's birthday. As viewed on May 15th, 2023. That's how you write that. Now, on a seller's side of this, if there's a beautiful chandelier in the dining room over the table that you have zero intention of conveying at the sale, take it down. Or be wildly explicit that it's not going to hang out. If you don't have a safe place to put it, I completely understand that. But that should be in the liner notes. We don't have a safe place to store that. It's going to be here. It will be replaced by not a like item. But if that's not going to convey, don't worry about it. You have a lot of people now that are moving. The guy's an audio file, video file. He's got TVs and speakers all through the house. The whole house is wired. You can walk into any room and go, Spotify, John Mayer, and it starts playing. People do that. They might go through the rigmarole of ripping all that stuff out, but sometimes that's going to stay. Like if I were moving and I love my TV and it was obvious, and maybe the buyer said, oh God, like, yeah, is the TV staying? No, Mr. Lindsay's going to take the TV, but he's going to leave the rack over the fireplace. And as I'm sure your buyers know, it's suitable to hold a 75. Rather than ripping all that down and ruining the paint, especially if the next family's throwing a TV up, I'd leave the rack behind. But finding all this kind of stuff out. Personal property, your washer and dryer are personal property. Do most families leave them behind? Yes. But being clear with the buyers too. Yep, of course, they don't leave the washer and the dryer. A lot of families do, just so you understand, Mr. Lindsay. That's personal property. When you buy the house, you buy the washer, you buy the dryer. Because it's so funny because home inspections, if it's getting conveyed, people will like run it. Sometimes the inspectors will run it. Just to make sure it fires. They won't run a full cycle, but they'll just fire to make sure it works. And then you'll get a phone call. This happened to me multiple times. Hey, Tim, it's Stacy. How are you? Great, Stacy. How's it going? Good. Just wanted to let you know the washer downstairs died. It's not working. Oh, have you called the repair person? Well, no, but I just wanted to let you know. Okay. Like at this point, you're in a pretty good relationship with your buyers, and you're just like, yeah, you bought that with the house. Like a hurricane could hit today. It's not the seller's fault. You know what I mean? It's personal property that's happening to convey. That is not a permanent fixture. But you'll see that kind of stuff. Tractors getting left in garages, that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you right now, and have this conversation with Brad Kelly or your amazing lender of choice, finding out about the items that we don't want those kind of items on the Alta, right? All that stuff, that's a horror show. You don't want that's conveying. That's if there are personal sales outside, if there's going to be a personal check afterwards. Like in the parking lot, after we close, I'm going to hand you a check for the John Deere you're leaving behind. That should not go on the Alta statement because that's not part of what's getting financed. That's personal property, right? You'll have some big deals. We had a huge deal up in Chickenboro years ago, and there was a side on our home inspection. The owner put a piece of blue tape on everything she was taking, and instructed my buyers to put green tape on anything they wanted. And then all of that was assessed. We had a side sale statement outside of the contract for $148,000. It was ridiculous. Yeah. Outside of the contract. Your lender doesn't not want an airplane in backyard transferring with the sale. Nope. No, Brad will track you down and kick you in the face. Don't do it. Talk to your lender about how they want you to handle that kind of stuff. Earnest money, what does that look like? What are we doing? It's so funny because years ago, depending on the price point, I remember buyers offering $500 if it was a $250,000 home. Can you imagine that now these days? You want it to be enough that they're not willing to walk away. You know? And it just shows skin in the game. Sometimes people would do two earnest money payments. They'll do one with the offer, and then they'll do one after satisfactory inspections and to lock it down. So maybe you take whatever number you were going to do and you split it in two. Completely depends. If you get into new inspection, you'll hear Jason Westcott talk about this. There is usually a massive non-refundable. If you're pouring the foundation, you sat with an architect. You're doing all this stuff. They are making that suit for you. If you don't buy that suit, it's going back on the rack. Right? I mean, it's not. Somebody else will buy the house, but it's usually a massive non-refundable. My last summer selling, did new construction with a family from Virginia. We closed at $595, and I believe their non-refundable was $65,000. Because you're in at that point. You better be in at that point. Due diligence and inspection period. Again, the welcome to the deal letter. Here are all of our important dates. Here's the window in which we can get inspections done. And depending on the velocity of the market, right now you're not going to be up against it. But back during COVID, just trying to find a home inspector. Oh my God. Like trying to get all those things lined up. You want to get that done right away. You want to execute that as quickly as possible. Time kills deals. If you're running out the clock on inspections, not great. You miss that date, you miss that date. You can't get somebody in after the inspection window. Time for seller acceptance, right? Once you get the offer made over, after you get through inspections, and you make, if you ask for anything after the inspections, then they've got time to come back to you with that. Financing term, super important. What are you going to use? Are you going conventional? Is it FHA? Is it VA? Is it rural? Are you doing a hybrid? There's conforming, there's jumbo, there's investment portfolio loans. Again, make sure if you've got a great relationship with a local lender, talk to Brad and his team at Movement about what they can do. Anything that they can't do for you, we've got great relationships in town. The buyer pre-approval letter, obviously important. What would normally happen too, your initial one is going to come through from Bradley and it's going to say, Movement Mortgage is pleased to inform Mr. and Mrs. Lindsay that they're pre-approved for X, just whatever number it is, based on their debt to income ratio. Then what I would do is write back to Bradley, be like, hey, dude, we're making an offer on 123 Main Street for X. And then he's going to redo a letter that says the Lindsays are pre-approved to execute a transaction on 123 Main Street for X. The listing agent and the sellers know that we weren't pre-approved for that number, but you would never want to show your hand. If I'm sending over 540, I don't want to tell them I'm pre-approved for 670. What are they going to write back? Dear stupid, send more money, right? Yeah. Or I've either sent it over with that number or have had Brad in the past has written the Lindsays are pre-approved to execute a transaction on 123 Main Street. Just they're tall enough for the ride. They're able to play in the space and negotiate. Or you send it through with a hard number. But we've had people that just don't listen to us and they send through the original pre-approval letter. That's like opening your sock drawer. Like, how much money do you have? All this. Well, then why are you only offering us this? Especially if you're lowballing, which you should never friggin' do anyway. But if you're going in after a 6, offering 540, and your pre-approval is for 690, you should just go lay it in traffic. That's just stupid, right?
Especially if it's just an offer. It's not even accepted.
Yes, yes,
They
yep,
can see what you have.
yep. Closing date, this is important. We want to find out from our lender on behalf of our buyers, when's the earliest we can close? Can we marry that to what the sellers want? Because what are we going to find right now? We're going to find a lot of sellers are like, yeah, we need a suitable housing clause. Are your buyers able to play in the space where they can hang out and wait for us? And that's a big piece of it. But you've got to find out from your lender, like what's our opportunity here? I'm not huge on home warranties and I'm not downselling them. The one time we executed one was on a condo in Concord for dear friends of ours. And after we closed, there was an issue. Of course there was. There was an issue in the septic, not the septic, but the sewage leaving the condo, going out to the street. And it was like at the 50-yard line. It was like right on the gray line of where they were still responsible for it and the city was responsible for it. Guess what didn't get covered in the home warranty? That. So people that use them, Michael Whitney loves them. And I'm sure we have other agents that love them. I used it that once. It punched me right in the face. I'm just like, no, never going to talk about it again. And we only executed it because our buyers wanted it desperately. And I'm sure after they took ownership, it probably helped them for a few other things. But the one big thing that reared its ugly head right after closing was that. And it wasn't that gross. And we actually took it out of our finances just to make our buyers happy because they were really good friends. But ugh. Repair limits. This is going to go in. This is where you're talking about anything above and beyond. You see this in the contract where while you're in contract, if something happens to the house that is more than $500,000 or $500 or whatever, like you need to know about it. Like obviously, if the kids are playing street hockey in the driveway and they take out a window, you're good. The deck burns down. We need to know about that. I'd like to know that. I love the deck. I love the deck when we had the deck. Now it's a pile of ash. I would like to know about that. So there's repair limits, obviously. We want that factored in. Any special clauses or addendums. When it comes to this, we always want to do an addendum. A lot of people are just like, well, we'll just write up a new contract. The last thing you want to do is burn the contract to the ground. So you'll always hear Westcott and JV talk about this. Use the addendums. Because anytime you break the contract, sending over an addendum that you have to agree upon doesn't blow the deal up. But if you're like, no, we'll just rewrite the contract, they don't have to sign that now. Now we're way outside the lines and you're running the risk of losing the deal for your client, which they might not love that about you in the future. So beyond a shadow of a doubt, we want to use our addendums. You'll notice that we do have an addendum clause, and JV and Westcott are always going to ask you to come to them with your question. There is an addendum clause that's out there floating around. Or I should say a clause library that's out there floating around. Our concern moving forward, because we're in such a litigious universe, is that we want to make sure that the words that you're using for your addendum mirror and match what you're trying to say, what you're trying to communicate to the seller or to the buyer, no matter which way it's going. So always just checking with them like, hey, I think somebody told me I should use this clause on this addendum. Does this sound right? And let Westcott or JV help you with the language on that. So don't just go in and plug and play. It's wildly important. Again, paper's white, ink is black. There's no nuances and there's no shades of gray. Well, I use this because somebody told me to use this. Well, all right, well, that was on this deal and it was that special, that because somebody used it on their contract, they probably grabbed, a version of it from the clause library, and then it got nuanced by JV or Westcott to make it appropriate for that house, those people, that time. So there's a huge library out there floating around. I know that. I do know that JV and Westcott pulled it down because they don't want it to be a free for all, because we don't want to put you guys out in a field with no pants. That's no fun. So just checking with JV and Westcott today at 1 o'clock. Ask the broker, kellertv.com.
What if you don't have any questions? Like, it's general.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, I mean, if you're available Monday at 1, it's Ask the Broker today, Monday at 1. Then it's they do forms Friday at 1. And then you've got Wednesday, and I believe this week we go Mass with Alice, 10 o'clock, that's at 9. 10 o'clock is Maine with Karen Hamilton, 11 o'clock is JP and Westcott for New Hampshire. So, and then every other Tuesday, we do Maine essential forms at 10 o'clock. You have like 6 hours a week with your brokers. Nobody else has that. So yeah, even if you have no questions, just go in there and hear what they have to say. If they're like, any questions? No, I'm just listening to other. You might sit in contracts class for years and never have a question. The beauty of contracts class is you got a veteran agent who can tell a story about what they've been through. And then there's going to be an agent that started after you that asks you a question and you're like, oh yeah, that's a cool way of looking at that. Or I'm glad they asked that because I never thought of that. I said this to Nate a couple of years ago. As we started to grow as a market center, I said to Nate, I'm like, I'm going to some of these national masterminds. And some of the stuff we're covering is so elementary. And I said, but the beauty of it, like Nate and I were getting full of ourselves. Like, we need to be in bigger rooms with more important people because we have such a massive company now. And we do. But at the same time, I also sit in some of these masterminds, these national coaching masterminds, and some kid that just started their program at their market center ask a question, or they start talking about something they're doing. And it's something that's so essential and so important, but I got away from it because I've decided that we're too cool for that now. So like it's contracts class is important to just sit and sort of be in the live environment of the questions and the answers getting transferred is really important. And when you do call JV or Westcott at 9:37 p.m. on a Saturday, if you're a repeat offender in contracts, guess whose call they might take? Might. I'm not going to say they will take, might take. Because they're like, oh, this is Miles. He's always in contracts. This is going to be a legitimate question. Not like, oh, this is Lindsay. He's never in contracts. This is going to be the dumbest question ever. Yeah. Yeah. And if they don't take the call or they don't call you back, and they will. But if you're calling with day one shit because you never go to contracts, or if you end up in Concord because you never go to contracts, like as soon as somebody's name hits Nate's desk, he calls us. He's like, is she always in contracts? Yes. Okay, so she knows what she's talking about? Yes. Then we know that you honestly just got jammed up or something went wrong or whatever. But if like this was a great quote. We were just in Texas last week for Mega Leadership Camp. And Jason Abrams from Texas, one of the guys that's always on. Jason Abrams had the best quote. He goes, we have to remind ourselves we're firefighters that hang out with arsonists. I was like, yes. Yes. Because some of our agents, yes, can be arsonists. So. And if you're a good agent, you're a firefighter. So no judgment, but that he said that, and everybody in the room was like, yes, yes. Sometimes it feels like the people are working against us. So just go to contracts, whether you have questions or not. The most important class that we have. Oh, hold on. Your checklist is in the workbook, all the stuff that was just on the list we just went through. Talk through the offer, right? We're going over this with our buyers to make sure everything's clear, because when we send this across the desk, I want to make sure that when Miles gets this and brings this to his sellers, there's no nuances. There's no, oh no, Miles, we actually meant X, Y, or Z. Super clear. Be sure your buyer understands the contract. I'll pick on my friend Chad again. His first investment property was up on Mirror Lake. And we got to, and I talked incessantly because he doesn't listen to me. I love him to death, but he's a pain in the ass. And what's line number 10 in the New Hampshire contract? New Hampshire purchase and sale. Line number 10 is about fuel. And I explained to him incessantly about all of this. And he was listening the way Chad listens. So we get to the, where are we at this point? We're perilously close to closing. And I'm going through some stuff with them. It's just like, yeah, blah, blah. Just heard from the listing agent, who was Randy Parker from Maxfield, by the way, phenomenal agent. Randy always sounds like he's calling from a hiding space under his desk. It's like, hey, Tim, how's it going? Randy Parker. Yeah, just talked to the propane company. Blah, blah, blah. So I called Chad. And I'm like, hey, man, one of the things you need to bring to the closing is we made our offer. My friend Chad bought the place outright on a personal check, which was really funny. Like, I remember because I'm like holding the check. I'm like, God bless him. Like $276,000 on a personal check from Bank of America. Yeah, God bless him. And which makes this next story fascinating because Chad's such a moron sometimes. So I'm like, hey, blah, 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 the propane, it's X. Because what most propane companies do is they will, more often than not, they're going to top off the tank. They're going to figure out what they topped off, extract what was in there as a balance, right? And credit back the sellers whatever was left in the tank. And then charge your new buyer with 100% tank, right? Chad, even though his dear friend Tim, that they've known each other forever, explained incessantly, the tank is owned by the company that brings the propane. The fuel inside is not conveying with the house. That is fuel that is owned by the company that used to be owned by the people that bought it before you, but you have to pay for a new fresh food. It was his, we were on the phone and I could see his head exploding because he was so confused by this. So when you think that you have over-explained line 10 or any part of Maine, Vermont, Mass, and New Hampshire to your client, explain it again. Line by line, read it to them. Are there any questions? Awesome. Next, right? Because I'll take the bullet, right? We have to take extreme ownership. I clearly did not explain that well enough to Chad. What did we have a fight about? $375 worth of propane. I mean, honestly, but that's also not great because I don't want that. The fact that we got in a huge fight about propane is pretty stupid. So explain it clearly and make sure they understand it. Review the price, the closing date, inspection contingencies, whatever's conveying. Know what is essential in your area. This is, I'll go back to Chad moving up to this place or buying this summer place. Randy Parker, who's historically been in Wolfboro his entire life. He knows that Chad's moving up from Massachusetts. And he's like, hey, yeah, I know you guys are coming up from Massachusetts. I'm just gonna give you some friendly advice. People tend to come up to New Hampshire from Massachusetts. Do me a favor. Leave Massachusetts in Massachusetts, right? Because people want to come up here and be like, no, we need a Cappy's liquor on every corner. We need sidewalks. Let's put in some more street lights. Yeah, not in Chicken Bar. No, thank you.
We could use a Kowloon though.
Oh my God. Your lips to God's ears. Yes. Kowloon 3.0. Yeah. Zoe and I have decided what we might do is open up an ice cream stand over near Loon Mountain. and then just spell it with a C, right? Yes, Kowloon. Oh, God, it's gonna close eventually, Miles. It's heartbreaking. And whatever they do for 2.0, it's never gonna be the same. Never gonna be the same.
Yeah.
Never gonna.
We'll still attend though.
Oh, yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll power through.
Oh, yeah. We'll make it happen.
No standard or common terms for offers in your area, obviously, and this is a big thing about if you don't play really well in the space, refer it to somebody. The beauty of having your license in any state means you can refer business anywhere on the planet. And I appreciate that you're licensed in the entire state of New Hampshire, but if you don't know where Colebrook is, send your business in Colebrook to Joey Sweat, who's actually going to be on the Morning Quick Start tomorrow. Because guess what? The friggin' listing that your buyers are buying in Colebrook is probably Joey's listing. He knows all about it. He's going to take great care of them. And when they buy their house and they're super happy and they've been taken great care of, who are they going to love? You, because you put them in touch with somebody who's awesome. If you're a general practitioner, you don't do brain surgery. You don't do hip replacements. You send them to a specialist. Everyone in our ecosystem who's the master of their domain and their zip code is your specialist. So if you don't know the common terms for offers in your area or in the area you're trying to work, don't get tangled up. It can be the biggest disservice to your buyers. I remember working with some people who relocated from Washington State. And he was coming out, he was in sales, he was coming out to start working on the Eastern Seaboard. They ended up buying in Ringe. And I was relatively comfortable out there because we actually looked out there at a house because there was a school system out there that had a great IEP that would have served my youngest son, Cameron, really well for his autism and his diabetes. We didn't buy out there, but I was relatively dangerous out there because we had shopped out there. Above and beyond that, my concern is you're out in a part of the state that you don't know really well. You're at this beautiful new construction house on this back deck with your buyers. You're looking out into this huge field and all this wonderful space they have. And they're like, God, look at that. There's probably antelope and giraffes and hippopotamuses. They think it's going to be this wild reserve that they're going to have all this privacy. And in one more month, they see excavators because there's a 9 million square foot Walmart going in that you didn't know about because you don't work in that part of the state because you're an idiot and you should have given it to Joey Sweat. I hope I've been clear. Said with love. Let's not get out over our skis because we're so worried about being the greatest real estate agent on the planet. Lean into your specialists. And that goes right to number 6. Avoid rookie agent mistakes. The power of our numbers is the fact that you have over 600 teammates. You have the ability to text or call JV, Westcott, me. If you don't have our numbers, they're very easy to find. Where are our numbers? kwclmhub.com. At the very least, you should have Jason and JV, your brokers. If you don't have their numbers, here are their numbers. Jason Westcott is 603-234-2589. Call him first, call him second, call him third. If you really need JV, it is 603-682-3218. The fact that you have 2 brokers that you can call and ask questions at any given moment is huge. That's how you avoid rookie agent mistakes. Every question you're going to run into has already been navigated by somebody else in our ecosystem. And the smartest thing you can do if you're in our ecosystem is raise your hand and ask for help. Nobody's going to judge you. Anybody judging you is behind you. You're getting judged by anyone in your life. They're clearly doing it from a back seat in your car. Anybody who's in front of you, anybody who's leading you, doesn't have time to judge you. They do have time to turn around, extend their hand and offer help. So if somebody in this environment is judging you, I guarantee they're behind you. If that sounds judgy, maybe it is. I'm going to go to the Michael Phelps picture of him winning that race in the pool and the swimmer from the other country is watching him win, right? Winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners. Double check all your documents. Follow all the instructions, label all the documents clearly. And when you upload stuff, and a lot of people will do this, you can put everything in documents. You don't have to put them under one big paper clip, right? You can put them in separately, so they're downloadable separately. When you put them into the MLS. Order them logically. Send over that email summary, right? You attach everything to an email, email the offer over, and you also send it in DocuSign. That way they're not missing it. Don't just send it over in DocuSign and assume that Miles saw it, assume that Derek saw it, assume that Talena saw it, and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. Then I text you at 10:35. Hey, Miles, I sent that offer over at 4:30. Did you see it? It's like, no, you idiot. He wouldn't. Oh, he's probably saying that internally, right? I'm going to call right away. Hey, Miles, it's Timmy. Thanks so much for your time on the phone earlier. Like I said, we're sending that offer over. It's in your inbox. You got all the documents in an email with a quick summation of our offer. Because what does Miles want to see right away? How much and when? And any big conditions that we might be asking for. Because when you start to work with your sellers and you hand them the offer, when do they want to close? How much? Because they already know how you're doing the deal financially. They saw that in the initial offer. They know that from the pre-approval, although that might change. Your sellers, for the most part, when are we closing and how much are we closing for? So email summary, also send it over in DocuSign. Number 6, notify the listing agent it's there. Add all, I'm going to say this 15 times. Add all documents to command. Here's the problem right now. How do you guys forecast your business? Amen, sister. If you don't put it in opportunities, how do Kaylee and Tristan know what's going on? It better be a listing. Better be a listing. If we don't put it in opportunities, we have no idea what's going on, guys. Right? And that's how we can start to forecast. That's how we know what's coming. We get a report every Friday. Myself, Kaylee, Jeff, and Nate get a report every Friday from Colin, and he tells us how many deals the compliance team has touched that week. And then we forecast out, actually, it was only Friday. Let me go back to it. And it just gives us a great idea of what in the hell is going on. Hang on, where is it? Here it is. So at 4:38 on Friday, Colin sent us the weekly update, projected units closing. So far in May, we have 243 closing, and it's only mid-May, right? So there'll be a lot more. We already know in June that we have 95 deals closing. We already know in July that we have 17 deals closing. We already know in August we have 8 deals closing. So for the next 4 months, we have a forecast of what's happening because you guys are putting it into opportunities. Absent that, we have no idea. And then Colin also told us on Friday that the compliance team reviewed 66 additional deals. And so far, as of Friday at 4:38, the compliance team had reviewed 714 deals in the month alone, in the first 13 days of the month. We have none of that information if you're not putting anything into opportunities to review. So here's my analogy. It always involves food. You're welcome. You're shopping at Market Bucket or Hannah Foods, and you get your cart. It's like Mother's Day weekend, holiday weekend. There's 8 trillion people at Market Bucket, and you get your cart and you get in line. And you're like, oh shit, I forgot the applesauce for the pork chops. Should you stay in line and send somebody to get the applesauce, or do you leave the line? You hold your place in line, or do you leave to go get the applesauce with everything else? Hold your place. So I stay in line with the boys, and Janina runs to get the applesauce because she knows if she sends one of us, we're going to come back with like trick cereal, probably some cookies, right? Don't send the boys for the applesauce. She'll go get the applesauce. My point being, when you start to put your documents into a cart in line, For Colin to start to check it through and scan it out, you hold your place in line. If you show up the day after your closing with all of your paperwork, what's happening? Somebody confused?
Yeah,
Somebody's confused. You,
exactly.
of course, of course.
It's here, but not.
Yeah, it's very busy, very busy. Yeah. This happens all the time. People show up the day after their closing with all of their paperwork. I mean, awesome. Congratulations on your closing. You're not getting paid in 12 minutes. But if you brought the last couple of pieces of perfectly executed paperwork back from your closing that you could only bring back from your closing, now you're in that window where we aspire at our company to pay you guys in like 24 to 48 hours. You have a closing on a Friday and it was at 9:30 and all your shit's perfect. You might, I mean, and especially if you're doing it with one of our title companies, what can you guys do? You can get paid at the table. You don't get paid at the table if your stuff's all jacked up. You're not getting a check or a deposit later that day if your stuff's all jacked up. So getting stuff into opportunities is so important. So important. Add all documents to command. We find more often than not that you guys wait longer on your buyers. Right? Because we start to put listing agreements and stuff in as soon as we get it signed, right? When we start the opportunity with our listings, we tend to drag our feet on our buyers. But again, we don't have this forecast from Colin on Friday, knowing that and we know, like looking at this, what he sent us on Friday, we know right now that in May, we have 243 closings so far. June's projecting 95, July's projecting 17, August is projecting 8. There's probably 50 deals that we should know about that we don't know about because people are dragging their heels. So don't do that. What is happening? Okay. Yeah, it's on the calendar. Nobody loves me. It's fine. It's okay. I love that about you. I love that about you. I love it. Yeah, Declan's always like,
It's here.
what time? Probably in the Shark Tank. Yep. Good to see you. It's not a big building. Like, it's not a big building. It's really not a big building. Anyway. Make sure the offer is complete. Huh. Confirm receipt of the offer. Let them know that you got it. This is where this gets exciting because people are just like, oh my God, I just talked to Kalina. She's sitting with her sellers tomorrow. Yep, she's allowed to. She's allowed to, right? When an offer is made, you're going to let them know, I got your offer. I'm bringing it to my sellers. All offers need to be presented, right? Get offer to seller in timely manner. Create the executive summary. You got liner notes you can go over with them. The high points. When are we closing? How much are we closing for? Any conditions they're asking for. The 1000% you're allowed to do this. Double check with our brokers. You can call the buyer's agent to review any questions you might have. You also are allowed to call the lender. Hey, Brad, Talina at KW. I just got an offer from Stacy at ABC Realty. Just wanted to double check. Everything seems to be here. I just had a question about this. Like it's a little gray in this or whatever, something she said. Are they going FHA? Are they doing this? There was a note here about, you know, financial gifts coming from a family member. Is it going to exceed this number? Blah, blah, you know, whatever. You're allowed to call as the listing agent. You're absolutely allowed to call and look into that. That I know that's Cow Hampshire for sure. Double check with our brokers if you got questions about that in other states. Seems like you're crossing the line, you're not. But that could be different in every state. And create an outline document to reference when you call the sellers. Because when the offer comes in, the best thing to do is call and say, hey, we got an offer, right? And in this day and age, a lot of people are probably going to want to go over it in Zoom, depending, again, this sounds ageist, I can say, because I have a ton of gray hair. Depending on the client's age, they might want you sitting at their kitchen table. And if they do, then the buyer's agent has to eat it. They can't get all worked up and be like, oh my God, it's taking too long. We just talked about this. Put your stuff into command. All of your opportunities should be in command. Everything that's happening should be in command. So we have that data. We talked about this earlier, right? The best thing to do when you get an offer as a listing agent, and you have to do whatever your sellers want to do, we practice obedience. They should be making a counter offer. We want to move towards negotiation. That's an entire friggin' job is to negotiate. And that same deal I've been talking to you guys about with Chad on Mirror Lake, that's the one that we broke up for a little while. We took about a month off, and then Randy called me back. He's like, are they still looking? I'm like, yep. He's like, well, my sellers are still waiting. I'm like, all right. He's like, well, let's get them talking again. Okay. And then Chad wrote a personal check with a crayon like a 12-year-old. And here we are. He already sold it. He made a ton of money on that. I think he sold that. I think he made $220 on that. I'd have to look it up. 91 Governor Wentworth. I think he bought it at 276. I think he sold for like 480, 490. Ridiculous. Who's having conversation? Don't lie. People are just throwing their paws up. Miles is like, oh yeah. As soon as I get off this stupid class, I'm gonna start making phone calls, Tim. Can't wait.
I'm thinking of making 10 phone calls, but I'm having 10 conversations.
Okay, listen, if Nate were here, and in the spirit of Nate's always here. This is his building. He's like, always here. It doesn't have to be phone calls. I am always going to remind you as your coach, that is the human batting machine. It's the fastest way to get in touch with people. But conversations. Can you create 10 opportunities a day where the opportunity for you with your people to talk about real estate and ask for help? Not a sale, help. Because you're having these conversations now because everybody's asking you about the office. You're like, oh no, I stepped away. I got my license. I'm with KWCLM. And my goal is to help X amount of families.
You should start actually reaching
Perfect. Yep. And then you talk about how many families you want to help and like, oh, how's real estate? I heard it's crazy. That's super fun. And, and then, or however you want to take that. Where are you hearing it's crazy? Right. And let them say, oh, well, on the news. Yeah, I appreciate that. Cable news networks, they make their money off clickbait and got you headlines going into commercial breaks. Are you thinking about real estate locally though? Oh yeah, I mean, we definitely want a lake house, but it's a ways out. Awesome. What about the lake house is important to you? Why do you want a lake house? Oh, we've always loved going up there for a couple of weeks every summer. We'd love to have a place just to get the kids back together because they're all in college now. And if we had a place on the lake, they definitely want to come home for summers rather than work in Utah and Texas and all that stuff. Awesome. So that sounds pretty important to you. Have you guys started to look? Do you guys want waterfront or water access? And just start having the conversation, right? Then a couple of things just came on. Do you want to go take a look? Because as soon as you get the listing card going and you get it in front of people, then they start having conversations at home that benefit you, that you have no control over, but they will benefit you. Because they start seeing properties. They're just like, if we grabbed a little bit of this out of our investment portfolio, if you sold that stupid snowmobile that we never use, right, whatever. And the next thing you know, because if we can get them into that, and this is what you'll always hear this pushback, especially from your buyers. Yeah, we're a ways out. Like there's no need for us to start looking right now. Feel, felt, found. Love this. I understand how you feel, Mr. Lindsay. We've had a lot of clients that have felt the same way. And what myself and my team have found is that when our buyers start to have an opportunity to watch the market, no matter how long you're willing to wait, or you think you want to wait, or you feel you need to wait, when you start to keep an eye on the market, when you do step into the market and become transactional, you have a much more satisfactory experience. And if we can have a 5-minute conversation about what you guys are looking for, less is more. Let's just get a broad view of what you guys are looking for. And if I started to send you those properties and the property that we talk about today shows up tomorrow, and if any circumstances change, you guys win Powerball, Ted gets hit by a truck, and you get to cash in on his $1 million policy, I don't know. And circumstances change the next week and you get to buy the house of your dreams, would that be a problem? No, of course not. Awesome, let's get started. I always use the negative positive, love that. Works every time. So make sure that, and again, I know as you guys are getting started, it's not plug and play for you to have those 20 conversations, those 40 conversations. Are you putting yourself in the way of success? Are you putting yourself in the pathway of where the money is changing hands, people are making decisions? Because if we're not, if we're going to be secret agents, you're going to be really disappointed very fast. And this is so true. And I actually heard this last week when we were in Texas. Most agents in their freshman year, so I'm speaking to everybody in the room right now, and Miles at home. You look great, buddy, by the way. Great lighting, by the way. Love it. Love it. Most agents in their freshman year hesitate to tell a lot of people they're in because they're fearful the next conversation is going to be that they're out. I love that. And I need you to stay in that mindset. Well, yeah, I just, I'm going to ease into it. And it's subconscious. Because shit, the next time I run into Tim, what if he asked me about real estate? I'm like, oh, I'm not doing it anymore. I'd rather have him not know I was ever in. The irony is that mindset and that inaction will actually lead to you being out anyway, right? So, and there's nothing, everyone wants to talk to us about our industry. That's the craziest part of this. Like, you got a friend in life insurance, Yanosaurus Rex. You got a friend in car sales, everybody thinks they know what they're up to, right? You got a friend who's an ambulance chaser, personal injury lawyer, everybody, but we put ourselves as real estate agents in our head that we're like on those bottom 3 rungs of the ladder with personal injury lawyers, car salesmen, real estate agent. We have to edify ourselves in the space. And we get a chance to ask every day, who do you know that we should know? Who do you know that we can help? And how do you view what you do? Do you view yourself as I sell properties or I help my friends that I know and love and trust invest? It is the greatest tangible asset in America is home ownership. And beyond that, investing in other properties so you can cash flow them and create a home for somebody else. So none of us, our most successful agent isn't having enough conversation. Ryan Serhant in New York, he's always running around on the internet. He's selling $8 trillion houses all the time. He would tell you he doesn't do enough lead gen, which is laughable because he's got a ton of business. But our perception is shit, but he doesn't need more lead gen. He just sold an $8 million condo, a $50 million condo. He doesn't need more lead gen. Well, we don't know that, right? So we having enough conversations? Are we adding them to our command? Anybody doing handwritten notes yet? Anybody doing handwritten notes yet?
Working on them.
All right. What does working on it mean?
Meaning, day by day, writing them out and getting ready for the big dump. Once I'm, officially out there.
So Miles is getting ready to get ready.
Yeah. Well, yesterday I was
That is a horrible book I will never read.
Well, yesterday I was having a conversation with a guy I ran into in the grocery store. Guy I grew up with, moved back to the area, living in a condo with his girlfriend, thinking about having a kid, all the fears of being house poor, moving, all the things going on in the market today, total irrational thought based on bulk media. And I came right home, reached back out to him, got his contact information, and am going out to buy him a handwritten card to send out and just get him in the pipeline. I'm very hesitant to make a leap, but starting the next part of the conversation through a handwritten card at that point.
Yep. Super simple. Thanks for your time the other day. Looking forward to helping you whenever you're ready to get started, but we have to take our own advice, right? And we have to get out of our own way. It doesn't need to be 8 million no cards at once, Miles. One, if you have 2 conversations, I would marry them to the conversations you have.
Yep.
And are you going to do every time you talk to somebody on the phone, you're going to send a handwritten note? Some people will. But to do it, to start the process, to get into the habit of doing it, maybe you do never step away from it. Maybe it's the thing that changes your entire business for you. It's Chris Carr with his newsletter. He went to do a listing for this old woman once, and she had all of his newsletters stacked up on her kitchen island, like under a coffee can. And he's like, oh, she's going to murder me. Like, she's kept all of his newsletters. He was like super freaked out. But she was impressed on his consistency. That's why she had kept them all. She's like, every month I get a newsletter from you. That's how I knew you were around. And he had never met her before. Absent their relationship with us, all they have is our reputation. And I know you have a relationship with your friend, but you're now building yourself up in this new industry. And how are we going to set ourselves apart? Right? Because everybody at KW has all these tools. Everybody at Nathan Dickey's KW has all these tools. What differentiates Miles from Derek from Talena is how you make me feel, right? Maya Angelou, it's not the words that we use that people don't remember the words we use, they remember how we made them feel. And sending out that handwritten note, recalling your last conversation and making them feel heard and cared for. If you can start doing that now, one at a time, two at a time is going to make all the difference. Does anybody remember? You guys can't see it. He can. You can cheat, Miles. How much is it for a violation? $43,280. Best way to avoid that is call the people that you already know and love and trust. If you're going to be calling on Mets, please go to donotcall.gov, get yourself an account. Personally, for me, because I'm never going to stand up here and lie to you guys, I never leaned on that too much because I stayed in my phone, because Nathan Dickey beat into my head to stay in your phone. I engage in every conversation with the spirit of contribution, and people are happy to be in relationship with me. Or Michael Mayer from 7 Levels of Communication. Today, somewhere in my city, someone is looking for help, and it's my job to find them. Someone's going to list their house tomorrow. If you look at any of our states that we serve, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, tomorrow, new listings will not be 0. It's not going to be a huge number, but it won't be 0. So the bullshittery that we have in our heads, if nobody's listing their house right now, then we should all just go home. We should just close the building, right? What are people proud of? What's gone well since you started in real estate that you're proud of that you want to share? And there's only 3 of you, so you can be our 3 ahas. What are you proud of? I'll start with Derek. Okay. From asking questions. Good for you. What about you?
So I did sign my first fire client last Sunday. I've
Mhm.
done 5 house showings already.
Mhm.
No offers. I also have a lead on a listing and another buyer getting pre-approved.
Sweet.
I just created some mailings that I'm sending out, one for family, one for neighbors. So that I can get that out there. Well, I took that script right from Keller Williams, right from the playbook.
Oh, perfect.
Scripts.
Yeah.
Neighbors, that's for family, friends as well. Just ordered my business cards. I'm just diving right in. I have a lot of stuff.
Perfect. I love that. Super simple. Perfect. Love it. What about you, gorgeous?
Me. I'm proud of the fact that I've been juggling full-time childcare while trying to get myself as educated as possible in the space to launch into success, making all the right moves between my family's life and work relationships to allow me the space coming up here shortly to dive in 110% and just have all opportunities open to me without the major restrictions I've been facing over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I love it. And you've got great friendships in this building too, which is huge, right? So when you're in here, like, I mean, I'll pick on the 2 goofballs that didn't know where they're supposed to be for DocuSign. So if you haven't met Declan Schreiber, he's the 7-foot kid who is in here. I think he wakes up God when he leaves his house, right? he calls God. He's like, wake up, we're gonna get back to work. And then he gets here. He's usually in this building before, he might be here first. He's here first thing a lot. I get here at about 7:15 and usually it's him or Dave Garvey. I call him Gandalf. Gandalf from Commercial. Yeah. All the tall people. Then I come in like a hobbit. So the fact that he's always here. Also, if you haven't met her, her name is Talia Sperduto. She has absolutely ignored any limiting beliefs that might be out there, and she just all in, crushing it. She's in our in-house market center team called the MREA Group. She's probably going to graduate faster than anybody else. And people like that who are always here, who are always plugged in. Look at the classes they're going to. Look at what they're attending, and they're still doing great business. So you have to find that fine line between, I need to be in these classes, but don't get locked into the education. It's funny because people are just like, yeah, KW, you can become a professional student. I always stop people and say, well, you wouldn't be a professional student because professionals, what's the differentiation between professional and amateur? Professionals get paid. Spend too much time in the classroom, you're gonna be wicked sort of smart, but poor as, right? So, find the line. Don't forget all of our classes that are hyper important. We're going to wrap up next Monday with Ignite. And then Zoe and I are going to launch it again in September. We're going to offer it 3 times a year. We've got business planning clinic coming up next month. I'm teaching Quantum Leap next month. There's the big classes that are important. We're going to put on the calendar. Never look at the calendar in the morning and think that anything on there is a waste of your time. If you've been to it before, if you want to attend again, great. Contracts is forever. Like you never, said with love, get to say, oh, I've been enough. I've done like 10 that is an ongoing conversation that you should always be in. But the most important classes, the repeat offenders, are going to be on the calendar over and over and over again, because we know that your life cuts in the way and sometimes you can't make it. So business planning clinic, I had never done a halftime business planning clinic. And I said to Zoe last year, I'm like, I'm going to start doing one right before we go on 4th of July break, because people get away from their goals. People join me for business planning clinic in the fall, and we do that to get ready for next year. Miles, you were in Boston last year when I taught, right, at Chestnut Hill? And we went to Kowloon, of course we did. Any
Yes, we
excuse to
did.
stop to go to Kowloon. Yep. And people will sit in the fall to get ready for 2023. And then we get to like, oh, I don't know, May 15th. And you're like, what did I promise myself and my cat I was going to do this year? Right? Oh yeah, I had all those goals. Where did I put them? Oh yeah, they're in the bottom drawer of my desk. Right? So like, just let's get that back out, put it on the table, have an honest conversation about what we want the second half of the year to look like. Because when we get back from the 4th of July, we're in the 4th quarter. That's horrifying, right? July 1st is October 1st. I know nobody wants to say that out loud. That's why I just did. Like, that's horrifying. When we get to October 1st, you are now working on closings for 2024. So that's why business planning clinic, the halftime that we do on the 29th of June, is important. We are back Wednesday to negotiate offers. Tomorrow, we're doing Fight Club. That is at 9 a.m. That is kwfightclub.com. Please join us for that. I'd love to see you guys in the room. It's honestly, everybody, cameras on, microphones off, making phone calls. Nothing sexy about it, but it's working for people. People are setting appointments. So, questions, Miles, before we escape?
I am good. Thank you.
Bye, boss. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.